Hey, this is Shane Tutmark from Delore, and you're listening to the Rumors Are True podcast.
Welcome, this is Jeremy Allen Gould, and I'm coming to you today to confirm between God and of man that the rumors you have all heard are true. I started this podcast to have a platform for the bands and artists that I've worked with in the past, as well as new musicians and artists that influenced myself and many others. The Rumors Are True podcast is an opportunity for the artists to tell their story their way. I'm still in the business of confirming rumors. I still love a good conversation, and I still freaking love music. So thanks again for joining me on this journey, and I hope you like what you hear. With that said, the rumors are definitely true. Hey, thank you for tuning in to this latest episode of the Rumors Are True podcast. My name is Jeremy, and today I welcome Tommy Rehbein. You know Tommy from the bands Toilet Rats, Small Towns Burn a Little Slower, as well as his touring time with Motion City Soundtrack. Awesome conversation with this extremely talented and gifted artist. So honored to have him on the podcast to talk his history. So I hope you enjoy this latest episode with Tommy Rehbein. Tommy, what is up, my friend? Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Salutations.
Salutations as well. Man, how are you doing, man? What do you got going on in your world right now?
So my world has been a whirlwind of activity. I'm just kind of wrapping up the release cycle for a new Toilet Rats record. And as you can imagine, you know, there's been a lot of planning for that and the shows around it. And, you know, just making sure that I'm getting Steadfast and Sweet Cheetah all the stuff they need from me and vice versa. So that has consumed my life for the last couple of months, but in a good way.
That's exciting, man. You up in Minneapolis, right?
Yes, sir.
How you love? You've been there for your whole life, or?
Pretty much. We'll get to it later. There was a brief stint right after high school where I went out to Wilmington, Delaware to play with some folks that you know. But yeah, I've more or less spent my life in the Minneapolis vicinity.
That's awesome. Do you love the winter or do you hate the winter?
I used to be all about it because I don't do so well in the heat. But after going through a couple, I would say traumatic things. Now that I'm a little older, I'm learning to hate the sun less, and I want to be outside more and kayak more and stuff.
No, I get that, man. Absolutely. Man. How's the music scene out that way? Is there a lot of good bands?
Minneapolis is in a really cool renaissance right now. We have a lot of bands in a lot of genres. Right now, kind of like a sort of a crusty, grimy, hardcore punk thing is happening. is going off right now with a lot of young bands. There's a lot of really good kind of like new gaze, shoegaze bands happening. And then kind of surprisingly out of nowhere, we're having a really big like goth renaissance in this area. Yeah.
Very, very cool. That's awesome. What's your favorite venue out there?
Oh gosh. I should also mention Minneapolis is sort of well known for noise rock stuff.
Oh, cool.
We have Caterwall Fest happens out here, so we get all these bands like Horrors and Cows and all these really cool loud bands come up for that.
That's fun.
And then Learning Curve Records is from here, and then AmRep is from here, so we definitely have a huge noise rock scene too.
Oh, cool.
Favorite venue? I'm a pretty big fan of Zora Darling.
Is that big or small?
I think it holds about 150. Okay. So it feels a lot like I don't know if you've ever been to St. Vitus in New York.
I have not, but I know what you're talking about.
It kind of has that vibe where like the front half is this really nice restaurant with good food, and then the back half it's a dark venue with a really, really kicking sound system.
That's awesome.
And yeah, really cool, fun place to play.
That's dope, dude. I love that. I've never been out there. I would love to experience it, not in the winter. So.
Well, I think the best time, if anyone wants to visit us, is in the fall because it's gorgeous. And if you even get like 45 minutes out of the city, you can be in some really beautiful area with bluffs and a lot of colored,
cool.
Orange and red and yellow leaves. So if you ever want to come up, I will host you.
Awesome. Well, that sounds amazing. I'm sure
cool.
At some point that'd be cool. Awesome, man. Well, Tommy, let's talk about growing up for you, man. Maybe some bands, some records, some influences you've had over the years to kind of push you in the direction you went in.
Yeah, I think the record that like really kind of changed my life was the first Ramones album.
Yeah.
I grew up around a lot of like metal, and I appreciated metal, and my friends were metal heads. But when I heard like the Ramones, I thought, now this is something I can get into. They were really funny. They had songs about sniffing glue, and I don't want to go down to the basement. It's like it kind of had this outsider edge to it, like the metal did, but it was a lot funnier and a lot more primitive and simple. And
sure.
I just immediately latched onto it, and I love them as much today as I did when I discovered them as a teenager.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, the Ramones are definitely trailblazing band for sure. What's some other bands that you were super into?
Really into My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah, great band.
Funny story. So, like, I liked Smashing Pumpkins a lot in high school, and I was wearing a Pumpkins shirt, and I hitched a ride to the cities with some older kids because they were going to the cool record store. And the people working at the counter were kind of like watching us. And then this girl working at the counter was like, "Hey, you like Smashing Pumpkins?" I was like, "Yeah, they're my favorite band," or whatever. And she's like, "Have you heard My Bloody Valentine?" I was like, "No." And she like literally puts it in my hand. She's like, "You have to buy this."
Wow.
It's like a scene from a movie. And she was right. I loved it.
Great. Yeah, was it Loveless?
It was Loveless. That was a smart clerk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Billy Corgan got obsessed with that record, and I think he used the same mixer from that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it makes sense because that record, Siamese Dream, is, a commercial shoegaze record, essentially.
Yeah, it's definitely got the elements for sure.
Yeah, man. Great record. What's another record or two?
The first couple Starflyer albums were real big for me. Just like Jason and Ronnie Martin's work in general has been really a big deal to me. Ronnie too, because like his music was weird, so like I like because I'm like, oh, it has weird synthesizers, and I like the rentals,
Sure.
So I'm like, oh, he has a Moog. I'm like, I kind of thought, I'm like, the vocals are a little weird, but I can deal with it. I think I was a really socially awkward kid, and I would go to shows and ask him a million questions, and that guy was really patient and cool, and explained how his gear worked, and so I think because of that kind of got me into wanting to get a Moog, just because that guy was like really friendly to this socially awkward kid and explained how the Moog worked, and he's like, you can only play one key at a time. I was like, what?
Wow.
But yeah. So anyway, out of his records, I think my favorite is the White Songbook. Yeah, Starflyer, Ronnie stuff. Oh gosh. I'm digging through the Rolodex in my brain. When I was a younger kid, I was probably more into like the punk stuff, like Ramones and Misfits and Bad Religion and stuff like that. And then but yeah, I also really love the Pixies and Jesus and Mary Chain. So it's kind of an amalgamation of punk rock and shoegazy stuff.
I love that. That sounds cool. That's really similar to what I listen to. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
When you were influenced by this, when did you start to obviously play instruments at a young age, and kind of bring me through some of those early bands?
Yeah. So the first instrument I really played was drums. I got a drum kit, and my friend Kevin, who lived down the road, got a guitar. And he was a little bit more into metal at the time, so we would learn some Metallica covers, but then we would also learn some Misfits covers, and play Nirvana or whatever, just kind of banging on the drum kit. But I couldn't play like Metallica. That stuff was over my head, but I could do it on drums. But then when I heard the Ramones and Misfits, I was like, hey, I can play this on guitar. And my older brother had this like kind of beater, like pointy, like Ibanez RGX kind of guitar laying around. So I would pick it up and figure out how to play Ramone songs on it. And that's what really just kind of got me going.
Absolutely, man. That's awesome. What were some of those first bands? I know you mentioned, which I didn't know this, but one of your early bands was on I'm Your Biggest Fan Volume 1 Tooth and Nail comp. Let's bring me through those early bands and bring me through that comp.
Yeah. So the first band that kind of did something outside of my hometown, we had a name called My Pet Rock.
Yeah.
And I think I still have this to an extent, but I think way more back then. I would say I was like a jumpy golden retriever where I meant well and I was friendly enough, but I didn't really understand how maybe I could be a little overbearing. Maybe a little ADHD that went undiagnosed or something.
Yeah.
But I would just write bands letters and I would send tapes to bands, and Mike actually wrote me back and was like, hey dude, I really like your tape. And he was really Mike Herrera from MXPX. Yeah, he actually wrote me a letter back and said he liked it, and he put us on one of their shows when they came through town.
Wow.
Yeah, he was really cool. He was just a super nice guy, and he showed the song to Tooth and Nail, and that band, we were very underdeveloped, but we did have a couple catchy tunes. And Tooth and Nail said, we'll put them on a comp if they can get a better recording, because I'm sure my recordings just sounded like garbage. And my uncle at the time, he had a little studio in his basement, so we went over there and knocked out that tune, and I sent the tape to Mike, and he got us on that comp.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What was that like at that time? Were you psyched?
Oh yeah, it's freaking out, dude. I was in high school. I was really socially awkward. I lived in kind of what was at the time a small town, and I didn't. This was like before you could find everything on the internet, and yeah, it was a real big deal to me, and it kind of showed to me like, hey, I can make a song and people outside of my 10 skater friends want to listen to it.
That's so cool, dude.
So yeah, if you're listening, if you remember me, you definitely opened a door for me to help me see a bigger world. So thank you.
That's so cool, man. I loved that comp, by the way.
It's a fun one.
It's so good. So many good bands. Fellsway's on that, and yeah, dude. Coolidge. What an awesome, amazing comp. I love that. That's incredible. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
What's after My Pet Rock? What was Huntington's after that?
Yeah, I think so. There might have been a couple local bands. Thinking that far back, there's some Spiderwebs, but the next band that did something outside of my hometown, at least, was I think I had a local punk band called Faux Pas. But anyway, Huntington's. I was still a senior in high school, and I had met those guys at Cornerstone. I think at the time I had probably had 5 or 6 Ramones shirts and a couple Screeching Weasel shirts. So Cliff is seeing me every day at Cornerstone. They're like, who's this kid who has a different Ramones shirt every day? Or a Screeching Weasel shirt. And then I gave him a demo tape, and he was like, oh yeah, this has some cool stuff on it. I like the music. Like, I wasn't a very good singer, but he could kind of tell that we both loved the Ramones. And so he invited me to come play with them after I graduated. So I graduated high school, loaded up my dad's truck, and he drove me out to Delaware.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild, dude. What were they? What were they on? Burnt Toast at that point? What label were they on?
Yeah, I think. Well, at the time, I think it might have been. Was it Flying Tart?
Oh, that's it, Flying Tart. Yeah.
But they could kind of. I think at that time they could kind of see the writing on the. They put out one record with Flying Tart, and then
Lying Fart.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't, like I didn't really have any interaction with that guy, so I don't have one opinion one way or another. So I can't. But I think it was time to make album 2 was around the time I showed up, and I think at that point they sort of realized that label might be
not
coming to an end. So I had rehearsed with them and co-wrote with them a little bit and played some shows around like Philly, Wilmington area. Then we went to record an album with Mass Giorgini, who did like, all the Lookouts, the big Lookout records.
What, Fun and Games?
Yep, we did Fun and Games, and I played guitar on that. And during the making of that album, I think it just became clear that like I wasn't a good fit. I think part of it was they're coming from maybe a little bit more of a, I don't think they're this way now, but at the time I think they maybe came from a little bit more of sort of a conservative youth group kind of background. And then I came a little bit more from like Minneapolis, where like the pop punk sound in Minneapolis is bands with really gruff vocals, like Dilger 4 off their heads, that kind of thing. So I think we were just coming from kind of different worlds and just different world views as well. I was maybe a little bit more liberal than those guys. And I love Cliff, and I think he's a great guy, and I think he taught me how to be in a professional band for the first time in my life. But I just think at that time we were just butting heads too much. And then he sat me down and he said, look, dude, this isn't working out. I'm glad you gave it a try, but I think when we're done recording, you have to go back to Minneapolis. And, he did what he had to do. And I don't begrudge him for it. So I was really young. That's the other thing, too. I think those guys were probably in their mid-20s, and I was like 18.
Yeah, that sounds like a...
Yeah, they gave credit to them. They gave me a shot, but I think we were just coming from different worlds on a few different levels.
Yeah, man. How do you feel about recording that record? And what was that like working with that producer? I mean, he did like a ton of bands. What was that like?
Yeah, it was awesome. He was a really good guy, and I didn't come from Minneapolis per se. I came from this town called Forest Lake. I've never played in a band outside of that town, and it was boot camp for me in some ways, where it was just like, hey, if you really want to be in a real band that's not just dinking around and talking between songs and playing crappy gear, this is what you have to do. But not in a way that was mean. Like, the producer wasn't mean. He just had a job to do, and working with him and working with Cliff like made me a way better musician. And so even though I got booted from the band, I got booted with a new level of professionalism and a new skill set that let me know, like, if I want to keep doing bands, I need to kind of step up my game.
Absolutely.
So it was a hard lesson that I benefited from greatly.
That's cool, man. How do you feel about the Fun and Games record?
Oh, it's great, man. I think it holds up over time. It's really catchy, and I think if you put it alongside its peers like Screeching Weasel or The Queers or any of those records, I think it fits right in. And I stayed in touch with the Huntingtons after all that, and Cliff Stevens stayed at my house a couple times when some of his different bands were on tour. So obviously, like, nobody held a grudge.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, and those people are just super talented. They're good songwriters. I have nothing but good things to say about them.
That's cool, man. That's awesome. That's really awesome to be a part of that band. I know they, influenced a bunch of youth group kids into punk rock somewhat. So
Yeah.
That's cool though that you were a part of that lineage,
Yeah, they're definitely like a gateway band for a lot of like homeschool kids and stuff. And I loved how like they'd play festivals and they had t-shirts that said "What would Joey do?"
That's
and
amazing.
I think they even got to be Joey Ramone's backup band for a couple gigs.
I do remember reading about that. That's pretty cool. That's amazing.
Yeah, so good on them. Good dudes, really talented. High fives to any Huntington people that may or may not be listening.
That's awesome, man. Awesome. So you leave the Huntingtons, obviously. You head back to Minneapolis. What are your next steps?
So I put together bands. The names were very cringy, but keep in mind it was the height of second wave emo. So I had this band called Wish Upon a Star, and it was me and some local fellas, and I really wanted to take what I had learned from my very short stint in the Huntingtons and just be like, all right, let's get back on the horse and try again. And so I just started writing songs and trying to book shows and open for bigger acts. So we got to play with like Hot Rod Circuit and
cool.
Some cool local bands. And so there used to be this thing called Book Your Own FN Life. I don't know if I could swear on your podcast. I'm trying to be respectful.
You can.
Okay. Well, anyway, it was this website where bands will just kind of post like, hey, this is what we sound like, and here's how you can get a hold of us. And there was a band on there from the UK called Grampus 8, and they listed as their influences Weezer and The Promise Ring. So I reached out to them, and we became pen pals. I sent them burned CDs, and they did the same. And we really liked each other's band, and we always joked about like, oh yeah, one day you'll have to come tour England, which of course is like never going to happen because we're a little bitty band with no money and no following, and plane tickets are expensive. But then this really like wild thing happened. So you remember 9/11, obviously. It's a big part of American history. About a month after that happened, all the airlines were lamenting that they were not selling any tickets. So there was a 3-month period where you could fly just about anywhere for nothing. And I looked up tickets to Manchester because my friends lived in Liverpool, and like the plane tickets were like $300, man.
Wow.
So
that's insane.
Unheard of. So I called him and I was just like, hey, we can get over there for really cheap if we can tour with you, if we could just use your amps and stuff. And then my friend he was like, name's Mark McGill. He's in a really good band called Down and Outs and Reviler, and he was like, book the tickets, mate. So yeah, we got our passports in order and booked tickets and flew over there and toured over there in this band that like didn't really have a proper album out or no label or anything. It was just like kids having fun playing out of their backpacks, and that was a life-changing experience for me. I'm still really, really good friends with Mark to this day. We talk regularly. I've been over there multiple times to hang out with him. He's been over here a few times. He's become one of those like lifer friends. But like, going over there like changed my life. And I was just like, this is all I want to do. And I just remember waking up just thinking like, holy crap, I'm in England playing rock music.
That's so cool, dude.
But, that band, it was I had a really strong drive where like, this is all I want to do. I'll quit my job to do it. I'll sleep on floors. I don't care. And I think the other guys were guys from my little town I grew up in, and no shade on them whatsoever. I just don't think they were cut out for that life. Yeah. I think they were guys that maybe wanted more stability, and they're like, yeah, the band is a fun thing to do during my college age, but I wanted to go hard. They didn't. And so, after a couple lineup changes, that thing kind of fizzled out, and I kind of realized too, like, this name is kind of cringe, and Anyway, so that band kind of fizzled out, and then but I had been to England and I toured, so like I really had the hunger, you know.
Yeah. Manchester.
Yeah. So I would say shortly after that, there's a band from my town called Motion City Soundtrack.
Yeah, big band.
Yeah. Well, at the time they were kind of trying to like sort out their stuff. You know, they were kind of going through some lineup changes and you know, kind of working through things that bands who are trying to make it are doing. And they had invited me to try playing synthesizer with them because they knew that I had an analog synth that I bought off of some guy from a newspaper, and they knew that I liked the rentals, and they're like, well, this guy, he's been to England, so he obviously takes it seriously.
Yeah.
And they invited me to play synth with them, and I really got to say, I don't think it would be fair for me to be like, oh, I was a full-blown member of Motion City. I was more of a asterisk in their footnotes because I only played a few shows with them, and I co-wrote a song with them.
Wow.
So the synth part I wrote is in the song called "Don't Call It a Comeback" on their.
Very cool.
But yeah, I think they also wanted to go really hard, but I didn't really want to play synthesizer in a band. Like, I like synths, but I just don't want to be a full-time synth player. I like playing guitar and writing songs.
Yeah.
And that was more of an auxiliary role. And it's not like I'm super arrogant, but I just didn't want to be like relegated to, you know, like playing synth parts that someone wrote. So they wanted me to come on full time, and then I was just thinking, like, you know, I really just kind of want to keep trying for my own thing here. And the irony was in the back of my mind. I was just like, I don't know if this band is gonna do much because they couldn't keep a lineup together. Well, they proved me wrong, but
do you regret it?
Not at all. Not at all. I'm a bit of a fatalist. I think what's supposed to happen happens.
Yeah.
And I don't really look back at my life with a lot of what ifs. I'm just like, hey man, if that was supposed to happen, it would have.
Sure.
So don't torment yourself.
Sure.
And in fact, you know, like, I've still remained really good friends with those guys, and I did other projects with those dudes, which we'll get into. And a couple guys in that band have been really big supporters of the different things I've done over the years too.
That's awesome. That's really cool, though. That's awesome that you got to be a part of something that wound up being really big in the very beginning, and that's cool to see. I'm sure that was cool to see their rise, you know, from you know, stepping away and just seeing it, being like, wow, that's, you know, they blew up.
They went through some stuff too, you know, like that band's been through a lot, so it's like sometimes my friends are like, do you ever regret do that, or like that must have really sucked when they got big? I'm like, dude, that's the wrong attitude. Like, if your friends are getting big, you don't think to yourself that sucks. You got to think to yourself, like, that rules. I'm happy for my friends.
Absolutely.
You know, that's my mindset. Like, I just think being jealous of people is just
petty.
It's petty, and it you're only hurting yourself. Your jealousy ain't hurting them.
Absolutely. You're 100% right. Awesome, man. Well, that was, you know, that short stint happened. Kind of bring me through next. I think small towns burn a little slower. Awesome.
That's
man.
right.
I definitely heard you guys back in the day. So yeah, bring me through the beginning of that band. Yeah.
Well, the cool thing is, through our friendship with Motion City, they actually helped small towns quite a bit. I started a new band, and we went through, you know, a couple lineup changes, trying to figure out our sound and figure out who's available to be on the road. And then we wound up with a pretty stable lineup. And then Chris Camp, who's a really good friend of mine from, you know, just from like mutual friends, and we had met at Cornerstone and stuff. He showed our stuff to Rise Records, and Rise really dug it. And he kind of vetted us through Chris. Like, hey, are these guys cool? Are they jerks? Like, what's the story? and Chris is like, no, they're good people. You may remember Chris. I'm not name dropping. It's just a music show. Chris was in acceptance for a little bit, and he was in shorthanded for a while.
Yeah.
But just a good dude. Like really, like encouraged me and showed people my stuff. Yes, we did an EPN Rise, toured it a bunch, and then Motion City Soundtrack showed us to some labels because they saw that we were taking it seriously.
That's awesome.
And, you know, they don't want to attach their name to somebody who's just kind of screwing off. So we ended up signing to Triple Crown.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How did that kind of happen? And was there any other labels interested?
We were talking to them. I think we were maybe talking to Hopeless. I think we had talked to, when Chad Johnson was at Tooth and Nail, we had talked to him a little bit, but you know, that Small Towns was not a faith-based band, so like Chad, that's a big thing for Chad. So he was like, "Hey, I think your band's really good, but it's not my focus." Mm-hmm. But he had like shown us to Hopeless and to some other labels. So we were talking to a few labels, ended up going with Triple Crown, and but the Triple Crown introduction came through the Motion City guys, and then Motion City also introduced us to Ed Rose.
Oh yeah.
So we got to go down to Kansas and do a record with Ed. So that was just sort of meant to be. You know, I didn't stay in MCS, but then the next thing I did opened. Some doors were opened because of the friendship that I formed for the 5 minutes I played with them.
That's cool.
Yeah, so we did that whole thing for a while. Honestly, we did a couple albums and an EP. And it just kind of, like a lot of bands, you tour a bunch, and then at some point you're just like, all right,
yeah,
I need to pay my rent, and this band ain't cutting it.
Who all did you tour with?
Let's see. We did a few tours with Motion City. Man, we toured with some Victory bands. I'm just blanking though. I think June.
Oh yeah, I booked June.
Junior Varsity.
Yeah, I booked them too.
I don't remember, dude. It's like 20 years. It's like 20 years ago.
I know. I get it.
I think we did some Midwest stuff with Branson, maybe.
Oh, nice. Is that how you met Matt?
Yeah. I was playing in that band, and we played some shows with those dudes. I might have met them a little earlier at like a festival or something, but then,
yeah.
Matt's always done a lot of mail order and stuff, so I think I've ordered things from him even way back then.
That's cool.
And then got to know him better when we played shows together though. Yeah.
That's awesome, dude. Well, having been on Rise and Triple Crown, I mean, that's pretty impressive, for a smaller band. And just, did you feel like, at the time before you broke up, did you feel like you guys were on a rise, or we might make it here,
That's the goal. I think a lot of times, especially back then, labels would sign 10 bands at a time and throw the noodles at the wall, and then whoever was getting whoever was like blowing up, they would put their resources behind them, and we were not one of the bands blowing up, but we did some really cool stuff. We got to make like a really awesome music video with Justin Staggs, and he's done stuff with like Foo Fighters and awesome. Motion City and NoFX and stuff. So that was really fun. And then through him, I met one of my best friends to this day, this guy named Shane Nelson, and I just feel like even though that band never like cracked the ceiling, I feel like all the people in my life that are really important to me came through that era.
That's amazing, though.
Yeah.
That's cool, dude. So what you sounds like you all kind of decided to kind of put it down just because the financial aspect of it. I mean, was it a good ending? And is it
was really sad. I will say one positive thing. We made a final album, and kind of at the end of that, when we were wrapping up that album, we kind of knew that this would be it. We're really proud of that record, but it just didn't get as much of attention because the band was winding down. really cool St. Paul label called Dead Letter Records. They made like a limited run reissue of our second album. So if anybody listening wants that on vinyl, check out Dead Letter Records. I think they'll have a few left. But anyway, yeah, I think the ending was just sad because it was some young people just sort of realizing that this big dream they had was kind of dying, and people had to get jobs and
had to grow up, and maybe a couple of us partied a little too hard and had to kind of like get that under control and just kind of like like you're saying, to sort of grow up and enter back in this the workforce, the regular workforce, and just I think it was like particularly hard on Danny because he really loved that band, and he was I think in Iowa, he was from a small town in Iowa, and I think he just had less opportunities to maybe get something new going. I will say though, he's been doing music since, and everything he's done after the band has just been awesome. He's got a little bit more like kind of the alt country Saddle Creek route, and just so proud of that dude. Like every solo album and stuff he's put out has just been like super killer. But yeah, the band ending was like really hard on everybody, and we there was a period of time where we just kind of had to distance ourselves from each other, let the dust settle, and then lick our wounds a little bit, and then come back and do our hugs and sorries. Yeah, and that happens. I mean, it's like a relationship sometimes, and you just have to kind of, like you said, let the dust settle and chill out a little bit, and come to reasoning in your mind. Oh, okay, this is probably for the best.
Yeah, and we were pretty young too. I think we had lofty goals, but we didn't always necessarily like make the best decisions or even know what we were doing. So.
Well, that's pretty normal at a young age. Awesome, man. Well, so that band ends, and then next you have what? Farewell Continental? And
that's right.
Kind of bring you to those.
Sure. So Farewell Continental, I remained really close with Justin from Motion City, and like whenever he was home from tour, we'd hang out and just goof off. And we started the side project thing, and the whole idea was we wanted a band that didn't have the pressure of taking like the super fancy glossy photo shoots, didn't have the pressure of having a glossy production, and we both really wanted to lean into like stuff like Pavement and Sonic Youth and My Bloody Valentine and things that we grew up on. And so that's kind of the whole idea behind Farewell Continental. We put together a band with a few of our friends and just made really fun, sloppy indie rock music.
That's cool. What was it like? I don't think I've even heard it, to be honest with you.
No problem. I mean, it's not drastically different from Motion City as far as like vocal melodies, but musically, a lot of fuzz pedals, pretty loose playing. We worked with an amazing producer and mentor named Ed Ackerson, and he kind of knew that fine line between letting us play sloppy indie rock and then telling us to redo a part. Sure. And we gave him free reins to mix it. This guy was really he was really into like like a lot of weird Britpop and shoegaze and stuff. And we told him, when you mix this, make it hurt. Make it weird. Do bizarre panning effects and put effects on the vocals if you want. Keep in some bad takes. We don't care. Just like act like an additional member of the band on the mixing board and get weird. And this was a guy with a really he passed away, but he had a really good skill set for all of his mixes were awesome.
That's cool.
But he got a lot of commercial work, so when he got the permission to get strange, he loved it, so I think he had a lot of fun taking the stuff we recorded and chopping it up and making it sound really screwed up. So it's basically like catchy poppy indie rock, but with like really disgusting guitar tones and like really screwed up mixes. Do you ever listen to that band Medicine?
Yeah, they're great. Yeah.
So they were a big influence on how to mix it. we're just like, it sounds professional. It's obviously like really listenable and has a fan base, but it sounds demented in a way.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
We're kind of going for that a little bit with the mixes.
What were you guys on a label at all, or was it?
Yeah, so we did some stuff with Paper and Plastic, and that was Vinny from Less Than Jake's label.
Oh, okay, cool.
So we put out a couple vinyl and a 7-inch or something. Did a little bit of touring. It was always a little bit of a balancing act to not encroach upon Motion City's plans, because they had a whole, that band has a whole management structure and people that rely on them, for touring and stuff. So we would kind of sneak it in here and there when that band was on on breaks or home from tour.
Yeah, well, that's cool. I mean, how do you feel about those records with Farewell?
I love them, man. That band was a lot of fun. There's been a few attempts to revisit it, but it's just harder to do. Like in our 40s, everyone just has kids and so much going on, and very little free time. So I don't know if we have a half-finished second record. I don't know if it's ever going to get finished or not, but I loved that band. I loved the freedom to just like goof off in that band, and
that's cool.
Yeah, just not have to have these super high expectations, but then we had this producer that made it sound cool.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Very, very cool, man. So what was the end of that band and into Naive Sense?
Yeah, FC just kind of fizzled off. I think there was a period of time where Motion City had announced indefinite retirement, but then Motion City kind of came back, and so because they came back, FC had to kind of
be put on the back burner.
Yeah, and then it just stayed. And then what had happened is in that time, the producer Ed had passed away, and it just became really hard to create without him, because he really became he had become such a big part of like how we approach recording and mixing and stuff. So we just never really picked it back up. We're not officially quote unquote broken up, but it's just sort of, it's on indefinite hiatus.
Yeah, I get that.
Naive Sense. So that's a hardcore band. My friend Natalie gone through some personal issues with, just going through some treatment and, coming out as a trans person in a very, very conservative Assemblies of God family where,
an AG too.
Yeah, pastor dad.
Same here.
So, that was a really challenging time for Nat, and she needed an outlet. So I got a phone call like, "Hey, do you want to start a band?" I'm like, "Sure. What do you want to play?" And she was just like, "I don't know. I can scream really good." I'm like, "All right, let's do a hardcore band." So we started a hardcore band, and it was we decidedly we didn't want to do something real chuggy or metallic. We wanted it to be like more kind of punky and weird. We were both really into like the Locust and 31G type stuff. So we kind of leaned a little bit more in that direction, and we called up a couple friends and threw a band together, and it was. I think that band was more like my friend was going through some challenging times, dealing with like some family fallout and stuff, and just my buddy needed an outlet. To me, it's no different than a friend who's like, if a friend were to call me today, it's just like, I'm going through a divorce, I need to hang out and look at records or play basketball. Can you come hang out today? I'm like, absolutely, I love you. Of course, I'm going to show up for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for me, that's like what that band was. That band, honestly, that's like Natalie's brainchild and Natalie's outlet, Natalie's platform for like processing some life changes and some lyrics. And I was just happy to be there as a friend and supply some sick guitar riffs.
That's cool, man. Did you guys do a full length or?
We did a couple albums, but our songs are so short. I think our full length was like 17 minutes or something.
That's wild.
So we did that and a couple EPs, and it changed every time. Like the first record was almost like kind of Black Flag sounding, and then the second one is more of a grindcore record, and then the third one was a little bit more weird and kind of like slow and mid-paced, and there were elements of kind of like Sonic Youth and Jesus Lizard, and so like we just decided we never really wanted to put out the same thing twice, and we didn't want to be like just total metal either.
Sure,
so
I get that.
Yeah, it was fun, you know, even though it was an outlet for Natalie working through some stuff. We goofed off. We had fun. We had a good sense of humor with each other, and we had a lot of fun throwing the gear in the van and screaming for people.
That's cool, dude. I love hearing that. I like that you referenced it to like just being there for your friend. I think that's a cool viewpoint, especially, you know, you being a part of something for someone else and just being, you know, that friend is. I think that's really cool that you viewed it that way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like Natalie's like crazy talented and has a lot of interesting, cool ideas and ways of approaching art and music. So it's just like, and always has, honestly. So just getting to be a part of the vision of somebody that I love was like really fun and educational. And I met a lot of cool people at the shows and stuff. So yeah, it's cool, nice.
Man. I love that. Very, very cool. Toilet Rats, your newest endeavor and your most current endeavor. Let's bring me through the beginning of that and kind of what brought that on.
Well, we don't need to cover them because there's just too many. But I've played in a bunch of different bands. There was one band called Robo Sapien that was kind of like a Devo thing, and that kind of fizzled out when COVID came on. A couple people moved. And I was just stuck in my basement, and I was bored. And I'm just like, you know, if I'm gonna get through this, I need to learn some new skill sets or find some way to entertain myself. So I just kind of started watching YouTube videos and kind of bugging a couple of my engineer friends with questions and teaching myself Pro Tools. And I wrote some really dumb songs to basically experiment on myself. And I just named it Toilet Rats because I was of the assumption that maybe 10 people would ever hear it. And that was maybe, you know, like I did a split tape with a friend of mine. His band was called Strange Visitors. And he's actually got, you know, a pretty good following. And so, you know, because of his generosity, I picked up some fans and then I just kept writing songs, and I slowly kind of learned what I was doing, and I slowly learned how to sing instead of just yell.
Yeah.
And I made an album that was a little more polished, but still not quite there. And I showed it to people, and some people were like, "Oh yeah, there's a couple like really good songs on here, whatever." It's called Toilet Rats 3, and it's on the streaming. It's got its moments, but it's not, you know, it's half cooked. But I just kept wanting to learn, so I just kept writing songs. And then I had a batch for 4, and I'd sent it out to some friends to get some notes on like mixes, because, you know, when you're working on your own stuff, you hear the same thing 8,000 times.
Yeah.
My ears are tired. And I hit up a few friends who are opinionated, and you know, Matt is like the nicest guy ever, but if he's not feeling something, he might just be like, yeah, it needs more work, you know. I sent it to him, not even thinking that he'd want to release it, but just because I trust his opinion on music. And then he calls me and he's like, I hope this isn't weird. And I thought he was just gonna be like, he'll lovingly tell me like what are you doing? He's like, I'm really digging these songs, and I hope I'm not overstepping here, but if you want to put this out into the world beyond Bandcamp, I would like to help you.
Wow.
And I thought, of course. You know, because I've known him for a long time, and the way he runs his business is very like similar to how Ian does Discord, and it's really up my... I didn't really want to deal with a business type label because I'd done that in the past, and I got burned pretty bad. But having this guy putting out records that he really likes as a boutique label and just kind of doing limited editions and stuff, it made a lot of sense. So that's where we officially started working together as a team in that sense.
I love Matt. Matt is incredible. He's so sweet, so kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's so talented too. I mean, he's just one of those dudes that when he's on board, you know, you're gonna get some quality. So
yeah, he really helped kind of like clean up the graphics and like at this point too. I'm not going to talk about work too much because I have to compartmentalize my work life, just so I'm not taking work home. It's a cool job, but anyway, I work for a company that makes guitar pedals, and we do pre-orders with limited edition artwork. And I kind of learned how to do pre-orders and boutique things through guitar pedals, and it was very similar to how Matt does pre-orders with vinyl.
that's cool.
And so we were just really on the same page, and Matt was all about doing it, and I was a little nervous because I'm like, Matt, I'm in my 40s, I don't tour, I don't have this like giant following. And he's like, no, man, I really believe in it. People will get behind it. He's like, Tommy, enough people know who you are and like you that people will buy it on your end. And then he's like, enough people follow Steadfast that I think between the two of us, we could easily go through a run of pre-orders. But we did it on tape because tape's cheap.
Sure.
And so we thought it's not a big risk. But he ended up having to like repress the cassette like 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's like, I don't really ever sell this many cassettes. And then he approached me. He's like, let's do it on vinyl. I just know it'll be fine. And I said, okay. At this point, we've got a few good reviews and some really notable press, and I'm getting on some like really good regional shows. I think vinyl is the next. We were very like calculated and trying to be real careful because I'm not a legacy artist. Like if you put out a Zayo record or something, it's going to do pretty well. Like I am not Zayo. I have no delusions,
Yeah.
But he's a smart dude. He planned it out really well, and it did just fine. And so that was the album Ivy. I hope I'm not talking your face off too bad.
No, you're fine, bro. No, you're
cool.
Yeah, Brett, why don't you talk about that record briefly? And thank you, by the way. You sent me a copy a while back. I really appreciate that.
Cool.
Yeah. Talk me through that record. I think it's fantastic. It looks great too.
Thanks. If people aren't familiar with it, I just say, imagine your cool, kind of gothy, punky older sister in 1987 made you a mixtape. And that's what that album sounds like.
That's so cool. That's what I love the way you describe that, because that sounds like really cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of synthesizer. There's a lot of fuzz pedals. I use almost exclusively distorted bass guitar. Chris Colbert, if you're listening, I think I saw your band once, and the bass player had this disgusting distorted bass, and I fell in love with it, and I employed it in my music.
That's so cool.
So anyway, yeah, a lot of dirty bass, a lot of synthesizers. I use a lot of the Juno 106 on that record, and it's just a mashup of like punk and goth and synth pop, and I do my darndest to sound like Robert Smith from time to time.
Not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. That's
yeah, it's just fun, and I decided to kind of write about like campy stuff. Well, first of all, the name's Toilet Rat, so I can't really take myself that seriously. It's sort of a security system to avoid being pretentious. And then also, look, we're not going to trauma bond too much here, but I went through a really brutal time. I went through, during the COVID era, one of my brothers overdosed on heroin.
I'm so sorry.
And yeah, it still screws me up pretty bad.
It does.
Grief is not linear. Like, I'll be great for 2 or 3 years, and then something just triggers it, and I'm just like an absolute wreck for 3 days.
Wow.
And there's no rhyme or reason.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're going through grief, and you experience that too, nothing's wrong with you. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
But I went through that, and then I also went through, a cancer diagnosis and surgery and survival, and I'm doing great. So,
good.
but went through some shit, dude, and I decided that I'm gonna keep this band really special by when I play a gig, I got a half an hour on stage. Sometimes it's just me, sometimes it's with me and my best friends. And it's not escapist. It's more like, hey, the world out there is a dumpster fire, or you got some stuff going on in your personal life that's like really rough. So for the next half hour, everybody in this room is going to lift each other up and have fun and dance really poorly and yell and be silly and that's a gift to you and to ourselves because we need that. Like, we got to come up for air. I don't think burying your head in the sand is helpful, but I think coming up for air and lifting each other up and making these like events is a really special thing. So I've just very deliberately decided to keep Toilet Rats as an act that has a fair amount of levity and silliness.
I love that, man. That's really cool. Like, you know, I think that's what, for me at least, and I'm sure a lot of people, music is an escape, like in terms of, you know, getting away from the, you know, life in general. But on the other side of things, like, you know, there's still that life. And then, of course, you know, having music that you can relate to about what you're going through or about what you're struggling with or whatever it may be. I think that's cool that your perspective on that and that, you know, it's a joy for you to write music for yourself, but also to, you know, help people in various ways. I think that's amazing, man. I love hearing that.
Yeah. And like, I grew up like really kind of like with that Dillinger 4 or Fugazi aesthetic where it's like, we're not here to entertain you. We're all in the room together to kind of like be here for each other. And I can't do this without you. And then you can't do this without the beat to dance to. And it's a group activity. It's not me being like, oh, look at me. You know what I mean? I don't, you know, I'm a middle-aged guy with, you know, who eats too many donuts with, you know, bad eyesight and a terrible attention span. So I don't, you know, I don't have anything to offer on that front, but I can offer you a fun time. And I love talking to people at the merch table and just kind of hearing people's stories. And
that's cool. It's
a fun band, man. Like, there's people from all walks of life that come to the shows, and that's really special to me. Sometimes we'll play a show and there'll be, you know, some goth kids and maybe a couple people that grew up in youth group, and there might be a couple there might be someone who's home from like a military training, and then there's like some crust punks and everything in between. It's just like, you're all in a room together and you ain't fighting. This is cool.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's cool. That's very cool. Sweet. So what does the future look like for Toilet Rats in terms of any new records coming out? I know you just put out a remix or a newer song, or a remix song, I should say. What does the future look like? Are you working on a new record?
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. So this record just dropped. It's not on the streaming stuff yet. I think Matt ran into some snafu with the distributor with some something to do with the code. I don't know. He'll figure it out. He's that's beyond me. But so the full thing's gonna come out pretty soon, hopefully in the next couple days.
Oh, cool.
It's called Synth Redo or Synth Redux Volume 1.
Oh, cool.
So the whole idea behind that is with Toilet Rats 4 or IV or whatever you want to call it, they're kind of more written as like rock, post-punk kind of songs. I need a full band to like pull it off live.
Sure.
But I get offers to play on things out of town. And like, dude, I ain't got any money, man. I got medical bills, I got a mortgage. Like, I just can't get a van and get like a bunch of Airbnb rentals, and like, I ain't kidding myself, man. I'm just this little indie artist. You know, I'm lucky if I get enough of a guarantee to like cover my gas money.
Sure.
So I had to think of a way to play out of town where I can maybe just play by myself or like maybe with one friend. And I don't want to do the acoustic guy thing. There's no shade on it, but that's just not my thing at all.
Yeah.
And I love stuff like Depeche Mode and Human League and Vision Video. So I thought it'd be fun to just try doing an electronic version of the songs. And so I started playing shows out of town with that setup, and Matt was really, really digging it. And then Sweet Cheetah, who's the PR company that kind of helps us get some interviews and stuff, they were also digging it. So the three of us just kind of put it out together. Remix up records can be a little tough to, but it's really neat because they're not remixes of the songs. It's not like some 10-minute dance version where I just loop the chorus. It's the full song, verses and choruses, but it's all just done with synths and drum machines.
That's cool.
The real interesting thing, when I first started doing it, people were just like, what the heck is this? What are you doing, dude? But then I started getting invited to play with some goth bands and some electric bands. And now those people don't even, there's a lot of people in that scene that don't even know about the rock record, but they love the synth stuff. So it's really fun. I'm getting to play to two different audiences a lot of the time. And
cool.
Yeah, it's just a really fun new way to represent the material. So I kind of think throughout the summer, I got to cool my jets on playing in Minneapolis. I don't want to burn out my following at home. So I'm going to try to do some regional stuff and maybe try to play some festivals and see where I can hop on some things.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as the PA system has some decent subs, I can put on a really fun show. It's usually me and then like a friend or two. And I'm in the crowd the whole time. It's still very much a punk rock show in spirit. I'm on the mic. I'm interacting with the audience, getting goofy with people, and the shows are really fun. But I'll probably do that when I play out of town, and then when I do stuff more Minneapolis adjacent, do more of the rock stuff. And then I'm also currently working on a bunch of songs. So I don't know if I'll have it out in 2025 or not. Probably not. But I do have a bunch of new songs that I'm really into.
That's awesome.
And they're kind of somewhere in the middle. There's definitely a few songs that have a little bit of that kind of like Cure Vision video kind of vibe going on with like guitars and stuff. But then I don't know. I think the next record is going to be kind of a marriage of the two styles.
That's cool. I love that.
Yeah.
That's rad, dude. I really dig your stuff, man. Like, I didn't know what to expect, and then Matt reached out to me, and of course you reached out, and I was like, "This is so cool." I sent it to my son because he's super into that stuff. He liked it, so dude, I really dig it. So
thanks. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on too, and I appreciate Matt. Like, obviously, it's a pretty small time, and I have a name like Toilet Rats. People don't really know what to expect, but. So thanks for giving me a chance and letting me just kind of yap with you today.
Dude, of course, man. Well, I know you can't predict the future, but what do you think the future looks like for you?
Well, hopefully I stay healthy, and I'm never going to quit writing music. So, I have at least another like really good record in me. So I think I'll do this for a while. And then, I don't know. It's funny. A really good friend of mine asked me the other day, hey, have you ever thought of maybe doing something a little less goofy, because the recording's really good and I could see this getting bigger. And I just said, I was in a serious band that pursued the labels, and it didn't really work out. And when I'm just having fun and creating communities, that's actually when I have more offers and more success. So I think I should just be myself. And if being myself is being silly and fun, I'm just going to lean into that. And if it's not for everybody, there's some people that really turn their nose at the name and won't give it a chance. And that's okay. There are people that like it and have fun at the shows. And so, long answer. I'm going to keep doing this until it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, that's fair. Tommy, I've really enjoyed this conversation, man. It was really cool to talk to you about, kind of your history and peek behind the curtain a little. And it's cool. I really appreciate, getting to know you over the last couple months. It's been really cool. And again,
thank you.
Love the record, and really excited for your future and working with Steadfast and all that. That's really cool. So I just appreciate you hanging out with me and kind of just talking to me.
Yeah, I had a good time, and yeah, if anyone listening wants to set something up, just hit me up on Instagram, and I have to do the shameless self promotion, right?
Yeah, absolutely, bro.
Yeah, I can if I could get a cheap flight on Sun Country, I could fly out there and throw a really fun party for you if you have a subwoofer and can get some people to show up.
Heck yeah, dude, that's amazing. Come down to Florida, bro. I bet you. I bet you I could hook you up with some people down this way for sure.
Let's do it, man. We have a finite amount of time on this earth,
Yeah,
and I've really realized that more lately than ever. And I just want to get out there and meet people and hug people and have fun and dance.
I love that, Tommy. That's amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much again for your time, dude. Really stoked to have you on, and yeah, we'll hang in the future, bud. Thank you, listener, for tuning in again and again. I really, really appreciate it. So honored to have you on this journey. So thank you for that. If you'd like to add me on Instagram and Facebook, at The Rumors Are True Cast. If you'd like to like and subscribe, you know the drill. I do have merch available if you're interested in that. There is a link in the Instagram and Facebook pages through merch. Yeah. So thank you again for that. Thank you to Tommy Rehbein. Super honored to have you on the podcast. I really enjoy your music, and I'm just excited to have had this conversation with you. It's really cool to have your time, so thank you to Tommy. We've got some incredible artists on the horizon, guys, and you know it. Nostalgia is still a heck of a drug. The podcast is produced by Wesley Hill, artwork by Jared Chase Bowser, and music by Brian Jaron. This episode is dedicated to the memory of my dear friend, producer, and man of many talents, Brian Jaron.